Introduction to KAZIM KHATTAK, surnamed SHAIDΑ. KAZIM Khan was the son of Muhammad Afzal Khan, chief of the KHATTAKs, and author of several extensive and valuable prose works in the Pashto language, who was son of the poet Ashraf Khan, and hence KAZIM was the great-grandson of Khushal Khan, already noticed. He was born sometime during 5 years subsequent to 1135 Al-Hijra, or 1722 of the Vulgar era. On the death of his father, the chieftainship fell to Asad Ullah Khan, KAZIM's elder brother, who, after a fashion too common in eastern countries, considered it safest and most prudent, of course, to act with great severity towards his brothers and other near male relatives. KAZIM, who was quite a youth at the time, could not brook this tyrannical treatment, and therefore separated from him, and even abandoned the Jagir, or grant of land, then in his possession. Asadullah, who appears to have been rather more favorably inclined to KAZIM Khan than to his other brothers, on becoming acquainted with the fact of his distrust, sent for KAZIM and used more every endeavor to soothe his fears and set his mind at ease, and the more effectually to bring this about, conferred upon him an additional grant of land, and betrothed him to a daughter, one of their uncles. However, the suspicions and fears of KAZIM, who doubtless had heard of the treatment the sons and grandsons of Khushal had experienced at the hands of his own father, increased at all this extreme in kindness to a greater degree than before, and he secretly fled from his home. Some say that he had an antipathy to his young cousin as a wife, and at the time, requested his brother not to betroth her to him, as he did not like her. This Asadullah would not listen to, and accordingly, to the Afghan custom, named her as the future wife of his younger brother. Be this, however, as it may, KAZIM took a wandering life and spent several years in Kashmir, where he acquired considerable learning. He subsequently lived a long time at Sirhind in Upper India, but afterwards proceeded to the Afghan principality of Rampur in that country, where he took up his residence, and there he passed the greater part of his life. On several occasions, his brother Asadullah sent any of his confidential friends to endeavor to induce him to return to his native country, but without effect. On one occasion, the poet had gone as far as Hassan Abdal, a town some few miles east of Attock, in the Punjab, on a pleasure excursion with some of his particular acquaintances, at which time a number of his relatives came to see him from the KHATTAK country beyond the Indus, and only 2 days' journey distant. But notwithstanding all their entreaties, he would not return home, and went back to Rampur again. When the gift of poesy was bestowed upon him, he took the poetical surname of SHAIDΑ, signifying the devoted or lovelorn, for he had now turned devotee, and had become the disciple of the holy men of Sirhind, and according to the mystic doctrines of the Sufis, considered himself devoted to the love of the divine. His poetry, like that of Mirza, is deeply tinged with the mysticism of that sect. The fame of SHAIDA's poetry soon began to be noised abroad, and at length Mi'an Muhammadi, son of Mi'an Abdullah of Sirhind, who belonged to the family of SHAIDA's spiritual guide, expressed a wish to be furnished with a copy, on which the poet sent him the, at present, only known copy, which now lies before me, bearing the impression of his seal. These poems were alphabetically collected to this volume in the year 1181, or 1767 of the Common Era, and indeed it is supposed to be the only copy that was ever made, for until shown to them by me, the descendants of his elder and other brothers who dwell in the vicinity of Peshawar had never seen a copy of his poems, although so celebrated among them. This unique volume, which I procured at Lahore, it was beautifully written and illuminated, and contains a number of odes, inserted on the margins of the pages. Sha'ida's poetry is highly polished, but deep and difficult, and approaches nearer to that of the Persians than of any other of the Afghan poets, whose simplicity is the chief charm of their writings. The poet also introduces a greater number of Persian and Arabic works. Sha'ida's first disappointment appears to have been given him a distaste for matrimony, and he died unmarried at Rampur, where he had dwelt so long. Soon after his decease, his relatives came and removed his remains and conveyed them to the poet's native country, and they found a resting place at SHAIDÀ, where the KHATTAK chieftains and their families have, for centuries past, been interred. And I would also say that basically everybody should really be able to be interred in the same way, in the same area as everybody else. Monuments on graves and all that stuff, I'm not, I don't support that. I convey about it, but we also have importance of legacy is more important than your name being passed on.